Hey everybody, Jen Hatmaker here, your host of the For the Love podcast. You guys, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you are here today. We're in a series called For the Love of Community and Friendships. This just felt like, as a podcast team, we're constantly paying attention to you, our listener, and what you are saying and what you're asking for. Like every time you send us an idea or a request, or this is something I'd love to hear on the show, we're paying attention. And we just have this consistent through line of our listening community saying community and friendship as an adult is still something of a pain point. I feel like we need instruction around this. I thought it would be this way, but it's this way. I don't know how to manage this as a grown-up. There's just a lot around this idea. And so we knew we wanted to do an entire series on it. And so I can't think of a better guest than the one I have today in this space, because I think sometimes when we're hungry for connection and friendship, we keep thinking it's a real complex, hard to find place to go get it. Like, where do you have to go? So where do you have to join? Right. But the truth is, we literally are embedded in neighborhoods. We live by people. Like, we have neighbors. We are already in a community just by virtue of where we live. So, and I know as a community, we run the gamut here. Like, some of us are deeply connected in our neighborhood and some not at all. Like, when's the last time you reached out to one of your neighbors? I know that we have certainly people that we feel comfortable with, but do we know the people we live by, right? Beyond, hey, how are you? Or do we know about our neighbors' families? Do we know about their lives? Do we know their children? Do we know their struggles and their victories? And I think right now, and Shannan and I talk about this, but our country is real wobbly around this right now. This sense of community in our neighborhood. We are absolutely being taught to fear each other right now. That we are constantly in danger, that people mean us harm, that our neighbors are to be distrusted. It's just the craziest thing I've ever seen, where somehow this constant rhetoric is turning us against our own neighbors. It's bananas. And so I'm interested in reversing this trend. This slow sense of like place and community and connection, these having people around our tables, having our neighbors on our porches, being around theirs, and being deeply invested in one another, living our lives, just our ordinary, plain, daily lives with the people around us. And so our guest today is just a precious friend of mine, really, like for so long now. And one of my favorite people. That is no hyperbole. And she's particularly gifted in the space of community and being neighborly. And you may remember, if you're a longtime listener, you may remember her from our For the Love of Books series, which kind of feels like a lifetime ago at this point. And she's back today. So I've got Shannan Martin with us. You guys get excited. She is just special. She's a special person in the world. I don't know how else to say it. She is a writer. She's a speaker who says she found her voice in the country and found her story in the city. And we're going to unpack that. She works as a cook at The Window, which is this local nonprofit in her community dedicated to feeding anybody who needs to be fed in Indiana, in Goshen, Indiana, where she lives. And she's just a wonderful and a special and a unique person. After you listen to this conversation, you will want to live next to her, which is a sentiment echoed in the foreword that I wrote for her first book, which is called Falling Free. And then her second book was called The Ministry of Ordinary Places, which is what we talked about last time she was on the show. And then her latest book is called Start with Hello. And it's just lovely. And it brims with possibility. And our other friend of the show, Oshita Moore, said this about it. She said, it's a call to action toward radical, realistic hospitality. And that's true. And not in some big, performative, complicated, fussy, fancy way. In fact, it's the opposite of every word I just said. And so I want you to enjoy this conversation, this idea of what it means to be deeply embedded in a neighborhood where you are a good neighbor, your neighbors are good neighbors to you, and you are truly living in this connected, beautiful way. It's lovely. It's hopeful. You'll see why she's my absolute favorite. So without any further ado, please enjoy this just beautiful conversation with my friend who I love, Shannan Martin. I'm so happy to see you. I was just telling you that it was like me bounding out of bed, like it's Shannan Day. Lucky
Yay.
me. Hi.
Lucky me. Hi.
I'm so happy to see you. Okay, so this is not your first time on the show. I'm so happy to have you back. But it was a while back. We did For the Love of Books, and at the time, the Ministry of Ordinary Places had just released, and so stuff has happened since. Life. A lot of life since then. And so, okay, I've told my listening community, I've done the things, like this is my friend Shannan, but I would love for you, before we kind of drill into some of this, if you would, to kind of lay out for the listeners who maybe didn't hear your first episode with us over here, who Shannan is, what matters to her, what you care about, where you are in the world, who are your people, what is your deal? What is your deal?
What is my deal?
Let's go with what is your deal, and then we'll spool out from there.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I am married to Corey Martin. He is a jail chaplain, and that's just central to a lot of probably, at least in my heart and in my head, that's pretty central to my life. We have 4 kids. So we have an adult son, Robert, who lives nearby, but he's out on his own with his family, living his adult life. And then we have 3 teenagers at home. We're getting ready to send our first kid to college in August. So that's something I've never done. Yeah. That's happening in about a month. So Calvin is heading to Purdue in August, and then Ruby will be a junior. Silas will be in high school. How? What? Why?
These children are just babies. Yeah, this doesn't make sense.
I know. They just keep getting older. Yeah. And so my family moved about a dozen years ago now to this home where I'm sitting right now in Goshen, Indiana. So Goshen is it's a small little city up by the Michigan line. We moved here, we had lived like 15 minutes away. So it wasn't a big dramatic move. And yet it was a real dramatic move. And when we landed in this neighborhood, which is just it's a really beautiful place. It has my whole heart forever. Yeah. And we'll talk more about that. But that's the point in time where I just became wholly obsessed with ideas of community and connection and belonging. And how do we do this? How do we kind of live together as neighbors in the midst of our full and yet very ordinary lives? And so at that point, that's when I started to just, I write about this, I talk about it, I think about it, I read about it. I care a lot about this. And just what have I learned and what do I continue to learn from my actual neighbors? Yeah. And then I also work on staff at the window. Yeah. It's a community kitchen just 1 mile up the street from where I'm sitting. And we cook lunch for for anybody who wants to come and eat with us. I work there 2 days a week, and I care deeply about food.
Yes.
This is something you and I have in common.
So much so.
So yeah, those are, I mean, between community and all that involves in food, I mean, that's like 97% of what I think about.
Yeah. What's on the menu this week?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I just made yesterday. So I didn't work today, but I worked yesterday. I made a massive, like for 120 people of tomato basil salad with like the balsamic situation. Now, working at a community kitchen, like normally I would love some mozzarella in that. We didn't have mozzarella.
You work with what you have.
We pivot. So it has provolone. We diced it pretty small. So tomato, I took basil out of my own garden, and they're going to eat that. They're eating that. Yeah. Here in about an hour, they'll be eating that.
Yes. Okay. That delights me to no end. Also, you talk a lot about what you're cooking, and it is from scratch, delicious. Like this isn't open an industrial size can and heat it up. Like this is,
I mean, now and then it is, to be fair, but the bulk of what we do, I mean, I spent hours chopping tomatoes and I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, I just stood there and did my work and, said hi to my friends, and I got to help serve lunch and all those things. But at the end of the day, I had 2 massive tubs of tomato salad that took me hours, and it's time well spent. I loved every second.
Yeah. You and I both also, almost in any context, just like to be somewhere with a knife in our hand and a beautiful something in front of us to cut.
Yes.
But then you add this like lovely dimension of feeding your neighbors and working with your colleagues and coming up with fun menus that can feed a crew. It's just incredible. Let's talk about this. Because I met you, first of all, and by met, I mean, I internet met you. Mm-hmm. So I was just reading your work, and I was just following you, and just like a side fan back in the Flower Patch Farm Girl days.
Yeah.
And so you briefly mentioned this earlier, but would you say that was the key that turned the lock, right? When you went from, I'm a girl who lives in the country with like gingham, fabrics, and gardens,
literally,
curtains, to now I'm a person for whom neighborliness, community became the center spoke of the wheel.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I would love to hear a little, if you can go back that far first. And be like, this was my trajectory. This is what I thought mattered. And to be fair, you were not living a gross life. Like, you had some beautiful elements in your life. You were close to family. I mean, there was stuff. It wasn't like I was terrible and then I was great. But you had a really strong and severe sea change in the way that you and your family were living and where. Can you go there, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So bless her heart, Flower Patch Farm Girl. I mean, she's still in me. And that's the thing.
Of course, you still make pickles.
I do, man.
Yes.
I mean, I'm still, I laugh about it. It's funny. That's the day where we couldn't just be our name, I guess.
Right.
Like we had to
That's right.
I remember typing into the computer. I had babies at the time. We lived in this gorgeous farmhouse, and I'm typing into the Blogger search engine, Flower Patch Foodie was my first choice, of course.
Oh,
and it was taken.
I didn't know
that. Foodie Farm Girl. It was Foodie something, one of the words. F, alliteration, all these things. It. And so I'm like, well, shoot, that's taken. So how about Flower Patch Farm Girl? And it wasn't taken. And I'm in people's phones to this day as Flower Patch Farm Girl. Like that's my
I didn't know your real name. That's all I knew. That was who you were to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just knew your face, your home, and your children.
But I'm like, how we rolled.
I wonder if she had the first name.
Right. Yeah. So my life then, I had small children. And so that part was kind of chaotic, but I really believed that this was my forever home. It was my dream home. I had grown up in the country. So had Corey. We believed that was like the life for us, and we were going to raise our kids, and they would, have this idyllic, upbringing. And then we were only there for 4 years. And it was, so we went from like, this is forever to like, this is real short. Yeah. And we're just going to make a big pivot. And we really did. It's hard to kind of recapture all of the spokes on that wheel. If anybody's real interested, I wrote it all down in Falling Free, my first book, but kind of how did we get from there to here? But really we were just captured in some way that continued to unfold and grow by the realization on some level, because even what we knew, we didn't really know, this is how life kind of carries us along. It's like this little kernel of like, wait, like everybody around us is very similar to us. And I wonder if we might be missing something. Everybody around me for really my entire life just looked, lived, believed almost exactly like I did. And so that made for a very comfortable life for me in a lot of ways. And then I began to crave something a little bit different. And it's worth mentioning, my kids all came into our family through adoption. That's another thing you and I have in common. Yeah. And so, there was, once we kind of set that wheel into motion of like, we're just going to move into this bigger city, into this little kind of overlooked neighborhood. It also was a much more diverse area in a lot of ways. So it wasn't like the inciting factor, but once that wheel was in motion, we were also smartly like, oh, this might actually be better for our kids too. Yeah. Yes, and so there were a lot of
like their neighbors.
That's right. Like they're not going to be the only non-white kids in their school. And that seems like a good idea. And so I've learned a ton just I try to be grateful for the areas where I have grown. It took some time. I wish I could say that I knew that all along, and I just didn't. Some of that came to me late, and in a lot of ways, I'm just making up for lost time and figuring out kind of, what is the good life, right? Like, what is the good life? And I think moving into this community has shown me that the good life requires us to be pressed up against people who are different from us in a lot of different ways. And I see it every day.
Can you I'm writing myself a note to ask you something later.
I do that too.
Do you? Like, I don't want to forget to ask you that. I wonder if you can talk about the early stages of that, because now this has become really your work in the world. I mean, this has developed strongly into not just your messaging and the way that you use your gifts, but your life, like your actual life. This is now, this permeates every sort of molecule of the way that you live now. Can you talk about it early on? Because we're in this series on community and friendship. And so you don't immediately go from, hey neighbors, we're here. Yeah. We're new. Let's do a whole new there is a process to learning what it means to become a good neighbor, particularly in a complex neighborhood. Yeah, right. There's less complexity when you just move into a same, and you pretty much can guess what everybody's thing is because it's kind of like yours. Yeah. This is not the case with your move. And so I wonder if you can talk early on, what was motivating you? What were your thoughts? What were you thinking about your neighbors? What were your hangups? Where did you feel disoriented? Yeah. And maybe even like under-resourced to sort of come in and live in a different way. I mean, I can think back into that time of our life. And number one, we were so truly excited to settle in. And, Silas was in preschool. Ruby was in kindergarten. She was just starting kindergarten. Calvin was in second grade. So just a whole different phase of life. Right. Robert was not officially a part of our family yet. So there was a lot happening. Corey, the jail was nowhere on our radar at this time. Like, life just continues to unfold. And so our lives look different in some ways, but I remember feeling lonely. But that was a motivator for me because now it's exciting to be here. We're glad to be here, but I don't know anybody. Yeah. And
I'm an introvert by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And still, like, introverts still need connection. Introverts still need community. And so, you know, that loneliness was a motivator. I just remember, you know, being weird to try to get to know people, you know, literally going out front. If I would hear people kind of walking past, you know, I'm pointing out my windows there, but that's our street facing window. And if I could hear people coming by, I would try to like be casually outside. You know, like I needed people, and I wanted to get to know my neighbors. And it was, I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I did not know. I had grown up with like cornfields as my neighbors for most of my life. I didn't know what I was doing. One of the things that I learned from that time that I think it matters for all of us to learn this is that it took me outside of finding my people. I kind of bristle against that language a little bit because it implies that we're going to go find comfort. We're going to go out and find people who, you know, on paper, we just make a lot of sense together and we've got a lot in common. We're in the same phase of life and then we're just going to be friends. I was suddenly in a situation where I just needed anybody.
Totally.
And it taught me, rather than going out looking for my people, I could just recognize my people. They were already here. They were already around me. On paper, we probably didn't make any kind of sense together. But just looking around in my ordinary life and saying like, hey, we're both here. That must matter for some reason. Let's find out why. Let's find out why that matters. Let's just kind of choose each other. Yeah. Because in some ways it's a lot simpler than putting the pressure on ourselves to go, you know, find somebody who has everything in common with us. It's a lot more interesting and fun. It might be a little bit messier, but that's where some of my most enduring friendships have grown. It's just recognizing like we're in the same place at the same time. And I think that's the gift of knowing our actual neighbors. I don't necessarily only mean the people who live on both sides of us.
Sure.
But just anybody we're kind of rubbing shoulders with in our regular, ordinary lives, that is friendship and connection waiting for us.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes, even often, we're faced with tough choices. All of us, really. Sometimes the path forward isn't that clear at all. So, I mean, really, show me a human person who hasn't dealt with this. I mean, decisions around, you name it, career, relationships, family, so many things. And I've been there, of course. And therapy helped me. It helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate everything life throws at you. So you can move forward, not just with confidence, but even like excitement. I've learned that trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. Like the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And so if you're thinking of trying therapy, just think about trying BetterHelp. It's entirely online. It's convenient and flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a really brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if you need to. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/forthelove today and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/forthelove. I have just the thing for you. Jen Hatmaker Book Club. We are going on our 4th year of clubbing, and it is just one of my favorite things. We read the best books every month, thought-provoking, entertaining, fun, important, meaningful. I always love it when our members say they would never have discovered or read a book were it not for book club. But the real party is in our private Facebook community. People have made lifelong friends there, finding connections with other women literally right in their neighborhood and getting together with all of our local chapters. So when you're a member, you get so much fun stuff every month too. Of course, you get the book box with the book and a special gift and a love note from me. But you also get a whole bunch of digital resources like discussion guides, custom content, music playlists from our authors. That's one of our favorite things. I also host video podcasts with our authors from each month, as well as Facebook live chats where you have a chance to get on Zoom with me for our month book talk. And you get special access to events, meetups. It's so fun. We are your people. Come join us. Use the code READ, READ, for $5 off your first month at jenhatmakerbookclub.com.
Your last book is Start with Hello. And I like it because it's a pretty simple, straightforward roadmap. But how do I do it? Well, let's start with hello. Right. Let's go to the beginning of any conversation. And frankly, that's true.
It is.
In some ways, this can be like a complex process of becoming like a really good neighbor and letting your neighbors be good neighbors to you and like living in community. But on another hand, it's not rocket science, right? Like I'm thinking about the listener going, "Ooh, I don't know my neighbors," or "I'm new," or "I've never done this before. I've never even thought about it like this before." Like, let's talk about some of those early reach outs. Be they awkward, weird, across language barriers.
Yeah.
I mean,
every relationship that we have, whether it's the smallest acquaintance or, our truest loves, began with a hello. The math checks out. And so we run the risk of overlooking these small things. And really, I think when it comes to community and connection, the small things are really the only things, because that's where everything builds from that. And so there's something, it can't be an ending point where we just, we're out in the world like saying hi to everybody and that's the end. But as we kind of condition ourselves to be paying attention to who is around us and noticing the people around us, and then, we grow into it. I think abundance means that we can let it be slow. And it is. Like there's no, quick and speedy plan to connection with the people near you. I've been here for 12 years. There are still people that I don't know. There are people who have come and gone. There are still people that it feels harder or it feels awkward in some way, or, we have barriers between us. And I know now that there's something to this idea of staying put in a place for as long as we're able. And we don't always have a say in that. But for as long as we're here, we're going to be committed to this place, whether we chose it or didn't choose it.
Yeah.
And we know that it matters that we live in a place where we can look around us and know the people closest to me know who I am and I know them. And when chaos strikes, a lot of times it's going to be the people near us in proximity,
of course,
or who are the first responders in some way. It just matters to know that they're going to have my back and that they know that I'm going to have their back. And so, there, when you think about what were some of those early conversations like, I'm still having some of those.
Yeah.
There's not an ending point. And so, just being willing to take those small little steps of making eye contact, paying attention, saying hello, helping when we can, it all counts.
I love that. And it reminds me of what you were wanting to title the book, and they wouldn't let you, and I loved it. Something for the long haul. Do you remember?
Oh, I try to title every book Love Song for the Long Haul.
That's what it was. Love Song for the Love. I loved it. I was like, yes, put it on the cover. And they just wouldn't have it.
I still have not given up. Listen. Because thank you for remembering that. When you said that, I was like, oh no, I don't know if I remember, but of course I remember.
Yes.
That's what it is though.
Yes.
That's how I feel in my life. And I'm going to keep repeating as often as I can while we talk. I am an introvert. Like I am not an extroverted person. Yeah. This does not come naturally to me. It's not always easy, but the more we commit to our place, whatever our place might be, the more we notice it, the more we attend to it, we fall in love with it. And that love just kind of grows, and we bounce it around the room kind of. And it gives us fuel for the long haul. It just does. It works.
One thing that you have talked at length about, and you wrote at length about too, in Start with Hello, I love that you have dismantled in this sort of this ethos of neighborhood and community is that at its core, being a good neighbor also means letting your neighbors be good neighbors to you. You're not just there. This is not a one-way street. It's I'm going to move in and bring the good. That's not at all. In fact, that is kind of catastrophic. So it's this thing like, oh, no. It is a give and receive. Like, we are good neighbors to each other. That's what really it is. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
I'd love to. When we set out to title this book, which is always a tumultuous process for me, because I keep giving love song for the long haul and I keep being told no.
That's right. I do appreciate your tenacity. I really do.
I learned that maybe titling is just not my forte. But when it got to the subtitle, like, not to get too in the weeds here, but these things really matter. There's a lot of conversation that goes into them.
That's right.
There's a lot of opinion. And I remember being really resolute, despite all the ideas being kicked around. It couldn't be a book, the subtitle is "And Other Simple Ways to Live as Neighbors." It could not be "Other Simple Ways to Be a Good Neighbor."
Exactly.
It had to be "To Live as Neighbors," because that implies this two-way streetness of it, like the reciprocity, because we can't be a good neighbor by ourselves.
That's right.
It requires, by virtue, it requires that we are living in the tension and in the abundance and in the push and pull of other people. And so, that's the whole key, is if we are not receiving from the people around us, we're just not living as neighbors. We're when I arrived into this neighborhood, I for sure still had some of those. I thought I had kind of, cast off some of them, but I still arrived with plenty of this baggage of like, well, here I am.
Sure.
Now what do I do? And a lot of people around me were reinforcing that by, okay, you moved into an under-resourced neighborhood. You must be starting a thing.
Totally.
You must be planting a church, which absolutely not. Like we were the last people that should ever do something like that. But it was like implied that there had to be this outreach, this ministry, if you will, that we were coming here to do. And I remember in those early years, even just being like, wait, now I just live here. Like, I'm not doing a thing. I just live.
Right.
Like, these are the conversations I'm even having with God at that point, was like, but what should I be doing?
What am I producing?
Right. What should how should I be helping? And I just felt like God was saying, like, just live your life, Shannan, just be normal. That's truly, if I could say like what I felt God was saying to me, it was just be normal, settle down.
Okay. That may have to be the title of your next book. Just be normal.
Right. But there's something that that helped settle me into the space. And that's really where the ministry of ordinary places came from, was this idea of that is the ministry, for people like you and I who came out of that world,
of course, or
who still might be in that world. The ministry is not opening a food pantry. The ministry is just learning to live in community with each other, in love, in respect. That's the thing. That's the key. And we know that God cares about us living as neighbors. This is a refrain through the Bible. And so, trying to figure out, what does that mean? Why does this matter? That's just been kind of my life's journey at this point. It's just really understanding that it's, and we see it over and over again. It's this idea of the give and take, the kind of taking the focus off of ourselves and putting it onto us as a collective.
A fun thing for me that I've told you about before is that my 3 a.m. nighttime brain wants to wake up and think about, like health insurance premiums that are due, and my children's future, and the state of all of our cars, and what I said that one time to that one person. But also, a fun thing for me now is that 3 a.m. brain is no longer invited to the party because of one thing: Focal CBD sleep gummies. They have changed my sleep game entirely. First of all, they work in that they have solved my middle of the night problems, but they're also yummy, like healthy sleep candy. I don't know what kind of magic makes them so effective because I'm not a scientist, but there's no weirdness in these. There's nothing bad. It's only good stuff only. Okay. So maybe you are a champion sleeper. If so, congratulations. And you just need a little focus during the day. Guess what? Focal has daytime gummies too. So I've got a code for you. If you want to change your brain game, For the Love is your code to get 20% off at focal.com. But really, sleep is priceless. So you can thank me later. So that's Focal, FOCL.com. And your code is For the Love for 20% off.
Tell us about some of your neighbors. Like,
Oh man.
pick a couple.
I have the most wonderful people around me. I mean, you know, our neighborhood at this point, 12 years in, it looks different in some ways. When we moved in, a lot of our block was abandoned homes. So the house that I sit in now was one of those homes. They were basically getting rid of, you know, tearing down these homes that had been abandoned for decades. So I remember that first year we were like, you know, talk about coming out of evangelical culture. Corey and I both had never been allowed to trick or treat. And we had these little kids, and I'm desperate. Yes. I'm desperate to get to know the people around me. So I'm like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to trick or treat. And so we figured, like, we were like digging under the beds for costumes. We were pulling stuff together, and then we went out, and like, then we're like, oh, there really aren't that many people around. It didn't work. But in the intervening years, that has changed a little bit. And so now, you know, I would say most of our neighborhood are Latino folks. So for some of those folks, we do have language barrier. Our next door neighbors have lived here. They moved into their home, which is like the twin of our home, but a different color. It's that kind of situation. They moved in like the year before we did. And one of the things that, like a tradition, and I mention it because we're planning this right now. We spend every 4th of July with them. In our backyards.
Oh, I know these stories.
It's been wild. Like one of the COVID years, we were like kind of trying to stay in our own yards, but still trying to celebrate. And I don't know how or why they were in charge of the music that year. And we listened to the Alan Jackson Christmas album on repeat. I don't know why.
Not Alan Jackson Christmas.
Alan Jackson Christmas on 4th of July.
I remember that detail.
I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that year. I mean, these are the things that, I mean, they're just amazing people. And, you know, we're not best friends forever with them. We're not going on vacations, but I know that that they have my back. I know that they care for me and my family. Laura passes us plates of food often. And for that, we are very thankful. We try to do the same. And it's just falling into this rhythm of letting it be what it is, reaching out when we're able. Not overcomplicating it. But then beyond that, you know, I think of the people I serve lunch to and with, you know, eat with as my neighbors. And they're just a beautiful, funny, caring crew of people. They are complicated in some different ways than I'm complicated. We're all complicated people. But I can say that knowing their faces and names, many of them are unhoused people who are honestly vilified by some in this community. And I just come back over and over again. Man, when we know somebody's face and their name and they know us, you know, these ideas that we might have about this group or that group or the other, they just fall away. You know, there's this unfair idea that if somebody is unhoused, they're going to be inherently a danger to us. And it's just simply not true. So I just feel like the luckiest woman alive, honestly. I really do. And I guess I want that for us. I want us to come to a place where we really believe that we don't have to be afraid of each other, because I think so much of this is rooted in fear of difference.
It is. And of course, we don't need to spill a lot of ink on this because you and I will never get off of it, but that is the dominant, pervasive culture we're swimming in right now, which is to fear one another, to always be on the defensive as if we are in danger, which makes us offensive. That's what happens When you constantly feel like someone is out to harm you, then in turn, you are chronically offensive. And even dangerous. I mean, we've been seeing this recently. You can't knock on a neighbor's door, without fear. Remy was wanting to do this door-to-door thing. She was earning money, saving money for camp. And I'm like, you just can't. Like,
I know
it's a weird moment in our country where people are scared and of each other, of the neighbor on their street, or a kid who's a different color or whatever. And so I'm with you on this, that if we would be willing to become proximate to one another, just in a normal way, just be normal, the title of your next book. I think we would be so pleasantly surprised to discover what we have in common, which is so much. It's so much. It's most of everything.
Well, and even our differences, like we can have a lot of difference between each other,
that too,
and not be afraid of that. We can celebrate that. I mean, I come back over and over to, and I appreciate what you shared about Remy, because I want to be always aware that, I sit in some different privileges, and I think the similar things about my kids, there's different levels of, like, some people need to be careful in a different way that's really unfair.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly the conversation she and I had.
And I have those conversations with my kids too. And it's important for all of us to remember this. Yeah. And I still feel like we are safer. The culture keeps telling us the only way to be safe is to stay far away from each other.
That's right.
And I think difference and polarization has always existed, but now our culture is telling us, not only are we different, you can't play with those people, and you can't play with those people. And if you do, your belonging with us is at risk.
100%.
And so it's just, it's not a new thing, but we're handling it differently. And we're saying, like, you stay over there and you stay over there.
Yeah.
The only way for us to be safe is by knowing each other.
I agree.
It's like any of your neighbors who know who Remy is, she can go to their door.
Of course.
They know her, she knows them. And so it feels counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I had somebody ask me that recently when I was speaking at a thing, like, well, but kind of that similar example, we can't even go to each other's doors. And I'm thinking, well, I get that. And I don't want to gloss over that or oversimplify that. But if we can get to know each other in ways that are slow and over time,
that's right,
then we can go to each other's doors
because
we know each other. It makes us safer.
It does. Case in point, right around the same exact time, when I am tucked in my bed at like 10 p.m. because I'm old, dead asleep, and Remy apparently was making banana bread. I don't know. You know how teenagers are like, you know what? It's 10. I should make bread. And didn't have enough sugar. So she walks to my neighbor's house. It's 10 p.m.
Oh my goodness. 10
p.m. And because we have each other's like gate codes and we do like get my trash and I'll get yours and you do all the things. Just walked into their house, walked right in.
Oh my goodness, Remy.
She's like, you guys, I'm sorry. I just need a cup of sugar. And I was like,
this is everything.
I'm just saying it can swing too hard where you're going to tell your own children, that is not your home. You still have to knock. Or also you don't knock at 10 p.m. So
that's hysterical.
I know, but you are so right. This can be overcome the slow way. The slow way and the real way.
That's the only way to do it. Yeah. That's the only way to do it is, and we like our quick fixes, and I include myself in that. But if we all decided today is day one, like starting today, whatever our life happens to look like, regardless of how connected we feel like we are, today is a new day, and I'm gonna try I'm gonna be a little more intentional.
Yeah.
And understanding this is not going to be like, and in 6 months,
That's right.
But when we make that little shift, that you turn that ship by just a couple degrees, it keeps carrying us into change and into connection and into more freedom and less fear. Mm. I mean, these are the things that we are longing for right now. And so people tell me all the time, this isn't even possible. And I know they're wrong. I know they're wrong. And so we can just put just a little more intention behind it. And that's why I wrote this book, because when I showed up 12 years ago, I didn't know what in the world I was doing.
Yeah.
But I learned some things along the way that made it simpler. And I learned them from my neighbors.
Yeah.
Everything I know was learned secondhand. And so, if I can, they say writers should write the book that they want or wanted. And that's really what I did here. I wanted to make it just as simple, as absolutely bare bones simple as possible, because that's the only way we're going to do it.
That's right. That's the only really way it is.
The bar has to be so low, or I'm just going to go sit on the couch and read my book forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And it's this recalibration. This is, again, this is old evangelical thinking, but it's this recalibration of what counts, right? Back in the day, the impact was the measure, whatever that was, fill in the blank. I mean, you could sort that out however you want for whatever the thing was.
Yeah.
It's just garbage thinking in general. That's not the thing. The thing is the small little moment. That's what it is. There it is, beginning and end. It's simple. Just be normal.
Right. It's not about I was raised, and probably you were too, the ultimate thing you could do was invite your neighbor to church. Well,
ultimate.
That doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really work for anybody. It doesn't bring us closer together. It splits us apart. So for my family, we came to understand that fairly early on. And we knew that if we were ever going to invite somebody to church, the path to that was through our kitchen. So that became our rule, our family rule. And we could have another conversation about even inviting people to church, but at that time in my life, that was conversations we were having. So unless you had sat with us at our table, that was just not even going to be brought into conversation. And that really helped to recalibrate us in some really important ways. And it goes back to that idea of what we're taught about ministry or serving each other. Yeah. What if we just decided to eat together? What if we decided that nobody is exempt from being in our home? Everybody's invited. That makes life really interesting, really quickly.
So interesting. So bring your curiosity to the table. Yeah. Because we'll have to stay pretty curious about one another. Instead of deciding, I know who you are based on how you look, how you dress, how you speak, that all has to go away.
What flag you have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that can go a million directions.
And there are limits. And I think, we talk about boundaries in this book. There are some boundaries that just can't be crossed. There are boundaries.
Talk about that a little.
I don't ever want to run the risk of distilling this down unhelpfully and just saying, let's just all love each other and let's all get along, because you know what? If the way you live or even believe threatens somebody's humanity, threatens their dignity, I mean, we might still have to find ways to coexist. We might still, find ourselves in situations where we are in conversation for something, or we're working together or whatever. But this isn't about giving everybody a pass, to just, I know, and and a lot of us know, I mean, we have to be able to agree on basic human dignity and respect and honor and being able to live our lives, and without fear, so there are, again, there are just nuances there that I don't want to dismiss.
I think that's a great point. And even in a relationship like that, where someone's posture or beliefs or language causes harm to somebody else's just humanity, even then it's helpful to just keep an ear to the ground. Yeah. Because people even can change. And so I have so many experiences in my life where somebody was causing active harm to people that I love based on just the words they're saying.
Right.
And I just thought, this is not a safe place for my family. These are not words I want my kids' ears to hear.
Right.
But just keeping a little bit of an ear to the door, it's so interesting, because when somebody's beliefs or thoughts or perspectives begin to be challenged, they look for somebody to work this out with.
Yeah.
And you might just have a conversation you didn't expect. And so I have now had come back with some folks and they were just like, would you be willing to have this conversation with me now?
I mean, you and I are both examples, I think, that change is possible. And so it does, it gets complicated. And that's the thing that I guess I want to say, like, we've got to keep pushing against this idea that if it's not immediately comfortable, it's not the right thing. I mean, we're conditioned to just constantly want comfort. And so much of what is good about life is found in that discomfort. And I love the way you phrase that, like just keeping that ear open. Yeah. Because man, when I feel, and I can fall into feeling like, I go into burn it all down mode, at least in my mind.
That's your Enneagram 8 coming in hot.
It does. Yes. But when I go in there, I have to remind myself, like, when I get frustrated that people just they're not getting it, whatever it is, fast enough. Man, I was a late bloomer in a lot of ways. And so one of the things that I want to keep reminding all of us is, and I tell people this in my DMs, that's where kind of the pushback comes to me, is in my DMs. And I have capacity to engage to a certain extent, but I just keep reminding people, you have permission to just be curious in healthy ways. You don't have, because we receive this message in evangelical spaces, especially, like, certain differences mean like stay away.
Deal breaker.
What would happen if you just allowed yourself to believe you have permission to just sit and listen in curiosity, and that it didn't have to threaten your belonging in your community? I mean, and I know sometimes it does, but you know what? Like, I've seen over and over again, there can be losses, but the rewards are great.
100%.
If we could just embody that permission, and really believe that we don't have to be afraid, I think a lot of things would start to turn around.
Oh, well, you're singing my song.
I know.
And I mean, back to just be normal. What if we could challenge the notion? And again, I'm speaking specifically from kind of an evangelical space. So some people would be like, what is she talking about? Right. But if that was your upbringing, what if we challenged the notion, like, oh, wait, this person's everything, their life, their beliefs, their partners, their whatever. None of that is my responsibility to even add 1 ounce to. I don't have to. That's not my thing. I'm not here to convince or change or cajole or shame. Like, that's not my work. That's not my job, and it's not my responsibility. Nor is it my
God.
God. Like, what if, okay, take that off the table. Now you can just have a conversation like a normal.
That's right.
Like, just be a normal and be curious. Like, and then what? Tell me about your mom. Like, what'd you do after high school? Just there. And then life unspools in a way that is like connected and beautiful. And that is a hard bit to unravel when that's been your programming.
Yeah.
Again, because everything I was taught to do, say, and be was attached to an outcome. Everything.
It's all right. Everything becomes a signal. I remember early in my time in this community, I mean, within the first year, I don't remember how I ended up at coffee with a woman. I've never had coffee with her since then. I still know her. We ended up at the coffee shop together. She had connections in my neighborhood. Yeah. And we're sitting there talking. This is early. Okay. This is gonna exemplify the ways I've grown too. And we're having this great conversation. And she, Goshen is a hub for more progressive Mennonite theology.
Okay, and that's a thing, everybody.
That's a
progressive
thing.
Mennonite theology is a thing that you now know about.
It's a whole thing, and it's a beautiful thing. But she said something about being, having this ethos of nonviolence, and she might have used the word being a pacifist. And I'm sitting there, and I'm so intrigued. Yeah, and I'm also like, am I in trouble? That was, I'm not kidding you. I mean, all of a sudden, like, I grew up in this, like, almost a culture that felt almost like war hungry.
100%.
it's hard to explain to people who didn't grow up in it. But I remember a clear, am I in trouble? Because I'm sitting here talking to a pacifist. Am I in trouble?
That's right.
But it was this sense of like, I knew like, we have like, she sees the world really differently than I was taught to. She sees God differently than I was taught to. Am I allowed to be having coffee with her? It's such a silly example, but I think we feel that in different ways all the time. And I'm just saying, we don't have to. We don't have to.
What a relief, right?
We can just be so like, I could have, and I did. Like, that was one of the things that kind of taught me, like, am I in trouble? Oh, wait, I'm not in trouble.
That's right.
I can sit here and listen and be curious and think about new things, and nothing is threatened.
That's
nothing
right.
is threatened.
That's right. Oh, it's so lovely. What a lovely way to live.
Right.
This would change a lot of things.
Yeah.
If folks
really
adopted this posture toward one another, toward curiosity, boy, the trickle down effect would be immense. It would change the fabric of our culture for sure.
Yep.
It's a good dream. I dream it with you. I think it's worth cherishing. Yeah. And worth pursuing and worth screaming about over and over and over. Yeah. It's gently available. And nicely and over tea. Yeah. I just love this. I love this work. And I want everybody to know that every little tiny thing we talked about today, you have parsed out in fullness in your 3 books. So from the beginning, transition with Falling Free, the Ministry of Ordinary Places earlier on in your sort of your space that you live now, and then most recently start with Hello. And so before I ask you what you're working on next, I had one really last important thing I wanted you to talk about, which I read this morning because of course I subscribe to your newsletter because I'm not crazy. And so I want you to talk about this very important scientific discovery that you have gifted me with. Oh my gosh. As of this morning. I just now knew it 1 hour ago. It's going to change your summer. No, I'm shook. You're changed. I'm shook. Yeah. Like, I kept it open as a tab on my laptop so that when we're done, I can go back and read more. I want to fact check the Harvard doctors. This is so funny to me. And I just can't wait to talk about it. Oh my gosh, this is so unexpected. Okay. Yes. I'm trying to move through my summer embracing abundance. However it exists in the normal, in the ordinary. Right. I think true abundance is something that's available to everybody. Okay. Yes. So this is kind of like my life is pure chaos. I always think summer is going to like it's going to change my life. It's going to be the best of everything. It never is. No, it isn't. Because we're all just the same people that lived here in May. It's still worse. We're just sweatier. Totally. So there's less food in the house and we're sweatier. Yeah. So I'm trying to learn. It's a work in progress. But one of the things that is abundant to me is reading magazines. I'm just going to give a minute of backstory. Magazines are falling out of fashion. I am their advocate. Yes, you are. It's so special to me, and it's been this way forever, to just sit and flip pages and see beauty and color. So I sat down. I had like a small pocket of time. I sat down to read an issue of The Atlantic, which I subscribed to from months ago that I'd never even opened. Of course. And I wanted to get to this really complex article on mental health stuff and unhoused people and, stuff that I care about. But as I'm flipping through, I get to this article called something like The New Science of Ice Cream. I don't remember the title, but I'm like, okay, I guess I'll get sucked into this first. And what I discovered in that article is a real legitimate scientist and health person saying ice cream is healthier for us than bread. Yes, that's right. I will not forget that sentence. The whole point of this article is like, they're finding that people who regularly, I'm not kidding, people who regularly eat ice cream reduce their risk of diabetes. Like that, it's so specific. Yeah. And I'm willing to believe this. They're kicking around like, could it be this? Could it be this? And, what about all these scientific things? Yeah. Look it up, Google it. Just Google The Atlantic ice cream. It'll pop up. And that is our abundance for today. I mean, listen. Go eat some ice cream. It's good for us. We are ending on a high note.
See, look, and this is, I'm drinking out of my ice cream cup. It's so perfect.
Oh, it's very
We didn't
meta.
even plan this.
No, we didn't. But I just read it and thought, I will suspend every belief I've ever been handed about sugar. I am willing to absolutely drink this Kool-Aid. Willing and prepared.
Okay. Did you take the poll? Did you vote in the mocha almond fudge versus mint chip?
No,
What's
and I
your
need
vote?
to.
What's your vote? Tell me.
It's for sure mocha almond fudge.
Thank you.
Is that the right answer?
Yes.
I thought so. Yes. I have a fundamental problem with two things. I don't love the mint in my ice cream, period. And also, unless it's done differently, I don't like little hard flecks of chocolate in my ice cream. That's not how I like it.
I love you.
Do you know what I mean? I don't like those little hard flecks.
No.
I want it to be different than that.
I don't want toothpaste flavored ice cream.
Yeah.
But there are two members of my household, Ruby Martin.
Yeah.
If mint chip is not on the menu, she's not getting ice cream.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's harsh.
It's absurd.
Okay. It's absurd, honestly. Like, I don't know how it's a question mark. I like big chunks. If I'm going to have chunks in my ice cream, let it be chunks of cookie dough, really of any kind.
Yeah.
Or big knobs of peanut butter.
Yes.
I'll have that all the days. Of course, you and I have the same flavor palette around ice cream like we do about brine. So that tracks. Okay. Yeah. So before I ask you the very final question, which you've had to answer before, will you just quickly do two things? Tell everybody where to follow you and how, and the newsletter, do the whole thing about that. And then I would just love to know, because I honestly don't know the answer to this. If you're working on something or conjuring something, maybe. Yeah. Where it's at. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you can find me on Instagram at Shannan Writes. I'm also on Twitter. I like them both. I love them both for different reasons. I'm in both spaces most days. And you can find everything else, including the thing I'm the most famous for, which is not one of my books, but is my pickle recipe.
That's right. I mean, listen,
makes no sense, but I'm here.
Take your applause wherever it comes. Okay. Hey, you deserve it in this one.
They will change your life. I mean, people have said, I don't like pickles, but I love they're no cook pickles. They're so easy. Right. They're delicious. But you can also find, my book, my Substack. We're doing a thing right now called Fat Tomato Summer. And that's all I'm going to say. Yeah. We have a lot of fun there. You can find all of that information on my website, shannanmartin.com. Yeah. And then, find my books wherever your books are found, and start with hello is going to be like the bones of all these things. Like, we even talked about, like, in the book, how to have people into your homes. How do we handle messes? What do we feed the people? I mean, it's a real wraparound sort of experience, and it's going to give you, wherever you're at, that starting point that, look out and figure out, okay, today's the day I'm going to be more intentional in this way. It's super practical. I tell lots of stories. They're going to make you maybe cry, probably laugh. So find those books. And then
by the way, everybody, Shannan's parents are really special, and her name is spelled Shannan. So you'll never find her with the O-N, and you'll be confused. So know that.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
I am in the noodling process of more writing of another book. I'm just in that I'm scribbling random things that I might never find again. I don't have a great system for this. I am a pen and paper kind of person.
Can you see this? These are some notes I'm scribbling. They're on two sides with arrows. Like, I've got arrows, and I wrote this way one way and this way one way.
That's what I'm doing.
They're just index cards loose
here, and it's really fun for me to do that. And it's daunting.
Totally.
It's all the things. The things. But so I haven't written anything yet. Okay. But and it might all change, as we know. We've both had that happen too.
Sometimes you grab something by the tail, and then it pulls you 10 miles in a different direction you weren't expecting. And everybody listening, I've told you this so many times, Shannan, but there's just a 0% chance you can ever stop writing, because you are a writer's writer. Yes, you are a beautiful human person. You are an incredible wife and mom and friend and daughter and neighbor. You are an extraordinary writer. So whatever else you put your hands to, lovely, grow your tomatoes, do your things, but put those fingers on that laptop and write the words. That is your, I think, like most profound gift. It's bananas to read your writing. You're so good at it. So
thank you.
Whatever it is, it belongs on pages, and, I'll gobble it up. Okay, finally, this is it. Look how late it is. I've kept you past the time that I said.
Hey,
because I came late and you're awesome. Last question. It's Barbara's question. What's saving your life right now?
Okay. Two things. I always have two things, Jen. Bear with me.
I love it.
I know. I am going this very night to, have you heard of the band Toad the Wet Sprocket from the 90s?
Have I heard of Toad the Wet Sprockets? Yes, I am your age.
I know, right? So I don't want to say they're a 90s band because they're still out in the world touring. I'm going tonight to a Toad the Wet Sprocket concert. Yay, what? I'm so excited. In Michigan. So I'm driving with Corey and a friend of ours, and I'm meeting there at the concert one of my friends from kindergarten. We went to school K through 12 together. And we're going to this show, and I cannot wait. It's summer mini road trip. But then the other thing,
to see some social media representation of this experience.
Come on,
okay,
you will. I can't wait. Yeah. The other thing that I'm going to throw out there, because this has been a lifesaver to me, and it's related. It's music related. But anybody who's interested in this conversation we've had today, I want you to go find this song and listen to it. I listened to it. I mean, we listened to this band quite a bit, but just 2 nights ago, I was driving back from summer with Corey, and the song was playing. And I said to Corey, this song legitimately makes me want to be better. It makes me want to it is magical and profound. It's by Dawes, Dawes is the band. The lead singer is married, I think, to Mandy Moore. It's just a little bit of side trivia.
Okay.
So there's that. That's just a little fun fact.
Sure.
Dawes. The song is called Crack the Case.
Okay.
Pull it up on Spotify. You can link it, Jen.
Okay.
In the notes or whatever you do.
I just wrote it on one of my really technical notes, which is the back of a receipt.
I really think it's super, super special. I think it is saving my life. It's saving me from my anger, which is a go-to emotion of mine. Let me know what you think.
Oh, I can't wait to listen to it. I've got the ice cream article to read. I've got this song to download.
I've
got a full morning of input, and I'm thrilled about it. Okay. Thanks for coming on today. I'm so happy to see you. All right, you guys. We scratched the surface barely. Like, Shannan has so much just depth to basically every single question we just tipped down on today. And so if you'll go to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, I will have this episode and all the show notes if you'd like to share it. And then I will link to everything Shannan just said, her site, her socials, all of it. So you can find that in one space. And I'm just telling you, if you don't already follow her, if you don't already know her, you are going to be so thankful. Like, fix it today. Start with socials. Just go start following her. She embodies, to me, everything kind of lovely and hopeful in the world. So, all right, that's it, you guys. Way more to come in the Community and Friendship series. We are deeply committed to this idea and to finding our way back to each other. And so we have an incredible lineup of guests coming your way. You're not going to want to miss any episodes. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to ever watch one of our interviews, we do a video recording of every single one of them, and they're over on my YouTube channel. Sometimes it's just really fun to watch two people talk back and forth and see our faces and our body language. And that is my favorite way to consume any of these. But of course, that's how I experience it. I get to look at my guest every single time. So anyway, that's there for you too, if you'd like to pop that up. Otherwise, you guys, subscribe to the show and you'll never miss an episode. We have so many good ones coming your way. All right, you guys, we love you so much. See you next week.